Exposed. 7 sinister cult tales that will haunt you. Unexplained happenings revealed. Ella's heart raced as she stood by the diner's flickering neon sign. Inviting her inside was a world where shadows whispered terrible secrets and dark figures prowled the periphery of her existence. Outside, the moon hung low, casting unsettling shapes across her neighborhood. Strange tales flitted from table to table as customers bemoaned their lost pets, sharing tales of men in hoods gathering under the cover of darkness. Ella brushed it off, just the ramblings of desperate minds, anything to escape real life. But inside, a formless dread prickled at her skin. Her son Ben, wise beyond his 10 years and innocent all at once, had begun talking about his new friends. Tall, shadowy creatures who encouraged him to play games in the backyard after sunset. She had chuckled at his childlike imagination, yet unease crept into her mind like fog settling on the ground. Little did she know, those shadows were already mingling with their fractured lives. One long night, after another grueling shift, Ella was jolted from sleep by Ben's laughter. It was innocent, joyous, too bright for the chill that nestled in the air. Rushing outside, she found him in the pitch dark, animatedly speaking to figures just beyond the dim porch light. The unease wormed deeper into her gut, but she convinced herself it was all harmless. Kids play pretend, right? A warm blanket of denial enveloped her thoughts. But the fears only intensified with each passing day. She began noticing the increasing number of missing pet posters plastered around the neighborhood like a macabre art installation. The faces staring back at her lost cats and dogs felt like haunting reminders. And then the whispers escalated. Some boys, older than Ben, had gone missing. Rumors of odd rituals echoing through the stillness of night filled the diner. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she imagined her son, lured into something sinister. Ella's protective instincts surged. Outside her home, she spotted Mr. Hargrove, the neighborhood elder whose gaze followed her in shadowy silence. Paranoia prickled her skin. He knew something. As she retreated inside, avoiding his piercing eyes, she felt the weight of a warning. Desperate for help, Ella turned to local law enforcement, only to be dismissed as an overworked mother losing grasp of reality. Just a few kids playing, they had uttered, rolling their eyes. It was a slap in the face no one believed. As she stumbled through her attic, a hidden newspaper clipping drew her attention. The headline screamed about a cult thriving in her community years ago, one linked to her lineage. A nauseating twist coiled within her gut. It was all connected. As night continued to stretch out, thick with impending dread, cryptic messages began to appear on her doorstep. They're watching. The wall that held her world together felt perilously thin, leaving her exposed like a deer in headlights. In the shadows of the yard, she clutched Ben's hand tighter, whole body trembling at the laughter that warped into something jagged around the edges. A figure loomed, indistinct and menacing. What was happening? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The shadows began to dance closer, laughter morphing, distorting as it twisted into chaos. Ella's heart thundered in her chest. Despair clawed at her throat. What if these friends weren't merely figments of Ben's imagination? What if they were the architects of a nightmare she dared not face? As the figure stepped into view, shrouded in darkness, she felt the chill of realization. This was far more than a game. Ella took a breath, steeling herself for a confrontation with whatever lurked behind those eyes that glistened in the dark, a choice that would echo through her life. Time was running out, and every second counted. Would she muster the courage to guard Ben from the unsettling truth that seemed ready to pounce? Ella felt air breathe away from her lungs as the shadow took form, a silhouette against the night that sent icy fingers skittering down her spine. Ben's laughter faded, replaced by a thick silence that pressed painfully against her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but every ounce of maternal instinct anchored her in place, gripping her boyish hand tighter. The figure stepped closer, features becoming discernible in the fading porch light. It was not human. It had elongated limbs that curved awkwardly, and its head was a jarring, featureless mass. Where its eyes should have been, two dark pits seemed to absorb the light around them, sending her mind spiraling into terror. Ella squeezed Ben's hand, urging him to stay still, to not acknowledge the approaching horror. "Mom?" Ben whispered, his voice tinged with confusion. "Who is that?" "Stay close to me." She managed to breath out, fear knotting in her throat. The creature's presence felt like icy breath on her neck, heavy and foreboding. Every instinct told her to run, yet her feet were rooted as if bound by invisible chains. Then the word felt like a prayer, a desperate plea as the darkness shifted, drawing in closer. The figure stilled, tilting its head in a way that felt unnaturally wrong. A vibration started, low and thrumming, building like a storm inside the quiet, thick air. And then it spoke, the sound rippling through the night, echoing in a way that felt ancient and wrong. "Join us." The words wrapped around Ella, squeezing her, leaving her breathless. "What do you want?" She managed, her voice shaking. "Your son has been chosen. He belongs to us," the creature replied, its tone chilling and mocking. Disgust roiled in Ella's stomach. A surge of adrenaline propelled her forward. "No!" she screamed, her voice cracking in a defiant rise against the grotesque figure before her. In that moment, the shadows surrounding them seemed to pulse, as if in response to her cry. Ella reached down, instinctively pushing Ben behind her. She had to protect him. "Stay back." Worried screams burst from her lips, and in that split second, the air shifted, growing cold and brittle. A clamoring sound filled the night, distant yet getting closer, like a gathering of whispers melding into a chaotic riot. From the corner of her eye, she spied figures emerging from the dark shadowy shapes moving with sickening speed, filling the yard with twisted forms. Boys' laughter, so sweet and innocent earlier, now became shrill and mocking, echoing through the thick air. They were no longer just children. They had become something wicked, drawn into this otherworldly gathering. Panicking, Ella turned to flee, pulling Ben towards the front door, her heart racing. As she moved, cold fingers of darkness brushed her skin, crawling with malicious familiarity. Everything told her to run, but her feet felt heavy, dragging with every step. Behind her, the cacophony of twisted laughter grew louder, filling her ears until she thought she might scream. Just as they reached the door, she could feel the weight of the shadows closing in. "Go," she commanded Ben, shoving him through the door. She turned, heart thundering, as those hollow eyes bore into her soul, calling out for what they wanted. In the heart of despair, she grasped the doorframe, a last bastion against the darkness. "Come back, Ella," it hissed, the voice slithering around her, seductive and vile. "He will be ours with one final push." She slammed the door, the sound echoing in the stillness. She leaned against it, breath coming in ragged gasps, panic swirling wildly. But the shadows were relentless, pushing against the door as if they had flesh and will. "Mom?" Ben's voice pierced through her panic, small and afraid. "Ben, we need to leave. Now." But deep down, she felt the dread fill the cracks of her mind. Were they already too late? As she glanced out the window, under the glow of the crescent moon, shadows danced unsettlingly around their home, whispering truths she dared not confront. What had she unleashed? The door shuddered once more. Ella's heart dropped. What do they want? In that moment, the laughter echoed in her mind, chilling her bones, reminding her of a reality she could no longer ignore. Time was slipping through her fingers like sand. They would not stop until they had him. With one last look at the creeping shadows outside, her resolve hardened. She had to find out the truth behind this curse before it consumed them both. But the chilling thought lingered. What if the truth was something she could never unearth? There was only one place to turn the past. Would old wounds hold the answers to what had taken root in Ben's innocent heart? The door rattled violently against the frame, the shadows pressing like a living thing intent on breaking through. Ella jerked back as a faint whisper seeped through the cracks, a sibilant chant that twisted her thoughts into knots. It was incomprehensible at first, but the tone was unmistakably pleading. Join us, Mom. What's happening?" Ben cried, desperation lacing his voice as he bounced nervously on the balls of his feet. "Just stay quiet," Ella hissed, her eyes wide, darting around as if answers could emerge from the walls themselves. She turned to look through the window again. The shadows danced menacingly, morphing into grotesque figures that writhed and coiled, a parade of nightmare forms. Her hands trembled as she gripped Ben tightly. "Mom, I can't," he began, but she clamped a hand over his mouth, fear surging through her like ice water. Silence fell abruptly, a heavy quiet that pressed against her ears. Then, one by one, the shadows pulled back and reformed, their grotesque shapes creating a seamless, swirling entity that hovered just beyond the door. Ella could feel their eyes on her, even though they were only pits of darkness. The weight of their gaze pierced through her. What do you want?" Ella gasped, but her voice was weak, almost inaudible against the creeping malevolence. A voice like thunder, both deep and fragile, resonated from the figure at the doorstep. "The child, he must come. The time is nigh." Images of old stories flooded her mind, tales about children taken by dark forces. She wanted to shake them off, but they anchored her further into dreadful reality. "No, you can't have him," she shouted. Clinging to Ben, she moved them away from the door, desperate to distance themselves from the encroaching terror. Suddenly, the door shuddered under a tremendous force, splintering the wood ever so slightly. Ella felt a jolt of raw adrenaline shoot through her body. "We need to hide," she urged. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy lamp, using it to barricade the door. "Where, Mom?" Ben whimpered, the panic in his eyes mirroring hers. "Anywhere," she replied, leading him down a narrow hallway, heart pounding. The air felt thick, laced with fear and darkness surrounding them. Every corner was an abyss where their reality blurred with something unspeakable. They entered the living room, filled with memories of laughter and warmth. Now it felt like a ghost town. Ella pushed aside the fraying couch to reveal a narrow trapdoor beneath the floor. She opened it, and a musty smell escaped, making her gag. "We have to go down there," she insisted. "But what if it's worse?" Ben asked, trembling. She didn't have an answer. The door splintered again, and a chorus of voices rose from the other side, chanting their demand. The urgency in their sound churned the fear in Ella's stomach. "It can't be worse than this," she said, forcing Ben down first before following him. Closing the hatch over them both and the darkness below, Ella's heart raced wildly as she crouched low, clinging to Ben, who trembled beside her. The world felt impossibly silent, the kind of quiet that indicates danger lurks just out of sight. They could hear the voices above now clearer, each word dripping with malice. Join us, was this a chance for escape, or had they walked straight into the mouth of whatever was hunting them? A sudden crash erupted from above, splintering the shadows momentarily, and Ella's grip on Ben tightened. The darkness around them was cold, oppressive. "We have to keep moving," she whispered, feeling the pulse of a new urgency. What would they find in the dark? Were they still being hunted? As they moved deeper into the abyss, the air grew heavy, thick with the weight of unseen eyes watching, always watching. In that suffocating gloom, another voice emerged, a new whisper, one of familiar warmth that shattered the chilling fear. "Ella, Ben, help us!" Both of them froze, hearts pounding furiously. How could someone else be down here? Ella's breath hitched with dread. If they weren't safe here, where could they go? And who was calling for help? The chase was only beginning, and the past, with its dark secrets, was clawing its way back into their lives. The darkness pressed around them like a living entity, suffocating and heavy. Ella strained her ears, trying to locate the source of that haunting whisper. Was it real, or just her imagination fueled by fear? The words seemed to wrap around her mind, tugging at her sanity. "Help us!" It sounded so familiar, like a distant echo from a past she'd thought buried. "Mom, who's down here?" Ben's voice trembled, breaking the silence like a fragile glass shard. "Shoo!" She pressed a finger to her lips, her heart thundering as they edged forward into the unknown. The air was suffused with the scent of mildew and decay, a stench that churned her stomach. With each step, the trapdoor above them creaked ominously, and she could almost feel the shadows crawling across her skin. "Maybe we should go back," Ben suggested, his voice barely a whisper now as fear crept into his words. "No," Ella hissed. "We can't. Not if we want to escape." The urgency of their situation crackled in the air. The whisper textured the shadows around them. It was growing louder, more urgent. "Ella, Ben, help us." The broader darkness seemed to pulse, drawing them deeper. Ella clutched Ben's hand tighter, her fingers intertwining with his. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a faint flicker of light ahead. It wavered like a candle's flame, beckoning them closer. Do you see that?" Ben stuttered, his gaze locked onto the glimmer. "It might be a way out," Ella said, desperately hoping her words would not lead them to their doom. They moved toward the light, the shadows whispering dark secrets behind them. When they reached it, the light revealed a small alcove, its walls lined with damp stone and remnants of worn-out candles. Signs of a long-abandoned ritual dwarfed their small forms. In the center was an old mirror, the surface cracked but glowing faintly, swirling with fleeting images past and present. Ella squinted, leaning forward as the mirror pulsed with an off-putting energy. Roiling faces appeared briefly, twisted expressions of despair and longing. A flicker of recognition struck her like lightning. She could make out the likenesses of neighbors, friends, even family. "Mom, look," Ben gasped, breathless. "There, I know," Ella whispered, her throat dry. She could see their lost cries reflected back at her, snatches of memories bound in sorrow. Suddenly, there was a rustle behind them, the sound of shuffling feet, cold and deliberate. Ella spun around, her heart in her throat. The trapdoor pulsated above them like the heartbeat of something alive, desperate to be breached. Join us," the collective whispers rose in a sinister crescendo, drowning out her thoughts. The shadows twisted and stretched into ghastly shapes, moving toward them in an unholy dance. Help us," Ben's eyes widened in horror. "They're coming." Ella reached for him, pulling him close. "We need to break that mirror." She didn't know how, but they couldn't let whatever was in those reflections escape into their world. As she lunged forward, a thunderous crack sounded above. The trapdoor splintered wider, and icy fingertips of shadow began to seep down. A figure, silhouetted against the dim light, began to emerge. A twisted face stared back at them, mouth stretching into a ghastly grin. "Come to us, dear children," it crooned, its voice a soft, seductive melody laced with venom. Ella froze, dread spiraling within her. They were trapped, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. In that moment, she realized they weren't the only ones that needed help. The cries came not only from the darkness but from the very walls of their lives. "Mom!" Ben screamed as the shadows surged forward, eager to consume. Ella's thoughts raced, two choices crashing violently against each other: break the mirror or confront the darkness. Each option weighed heavy as time slowed, and the figure's smile twisted wider, stretching toward them. What if it was already too late? As they braced for impact, Ella locked eyes with her son, and in that shared glance, a shudder of determination sparked between them. She would protect him at all costs, even if it meant breaking the mirror and facing whatever lay beyond. Then, a shattering scream pierced the air. Everything went black. What had they unleashed? And would they ever escape the madness waiting to engulf them? When the blackness receded, Ella found herself gasping for air. The chill of cold, hard ground pressed against her back, her body heavy with an unfamiliar weight. Panic clawed at her throat as she shot up, taking in her surroundings. They were no longer in the alcove but outside on the edge of the forest that loomed over their small town like a watchful giant. "Ben," she called, her voice breaking in desperation. "Where are you?" Nothing but eerie silence replied, the kind that seemed to absorb sound, amplifying her fear. She scrambled to her feet, mind racing. The forest stood like a wall of tangled darkness, shadows flickering in and out among the trees. She felt disoriented, a displacement from what was once familiar. The whispering voices had gone silent, but the echo of their urgency still hummed in her ears. It intertwined with memories of laughter and joy, a haunting reminder of what they had left behind. She turned, scanning the clearing around her. "Ben!" she shouted again, but the only response was the menacing rustle of leaves. With trembling hands, Ella took a step toward the forest, each movement deliberate yet filled with dread. The trees seemed to lean closer, branches reaching for her, almost inviting her into their shelter. She swallowed hard, shaking with a mix of fear and determination. She had to find Ben. Just then, a flicker caught her eye. It was a light in the distance, dancing among the shadows in a rhythm that felt wrong. It pulsed, like a heartbeat, drawing her in despite the rising dread in her chest. Ben! Hope surged through her, bearing the weight of a mother's instinct to protect. She moved toward the light, pushing through low-hanging branches that clutched at her clothes, tearing at her like vengeful fingers. As she stepped deeper into the trees, an intense cold began to seep into her bones, wrapping around her like a shroud. Ella finally broke into a small clearing, one she had never seen before, yet it struck a chord deep within her. In the center stood a circle of stones, each etched with symbols that pulsed with the same eerie light. The air was thick with an oppressive atmosphere, the scent of damp earth and something acrid that burned in her nostrils. Shouts of laughter rang out, echoing off the trees. "Help us! Come join us!" The voices felt familiar, a chilling reminder of Ben's whispers. "Ben?" Ella cried, scanning desperately, heart pounding painfully against her ribs. "Mom!" His voice rang clear now. She turned, following it to find him standing at the edge of the circle, eyes wide, face pale. In his hands was a small object shimmering, unearthly, alive with a strange glow that seemed to scream for attention. "No, Ben!" Ella shouted as she lunged forward, but the moment her foot crossed into the circle, the ground trembled violently. The air became electric, buzzing with a terrifying energy. "Join us! Join us!" Shapes began to form within the shadows, twisting through the air, grinning with faces she recognized. Friends, neighbors, even family, their eyes filled with desire and madness. The mirror had it drawn them all in? "Mom, it's beautiful." Ben's voice was laced with awe, but Ella could only see the terror emanating from his wide eyes. Struggling, she fought against the pull of the circle while reaching for him. "Drop it. We need to leave," Ella screamed, but Ben stood mesmerized, entranced by the light. The pulsating stone glowed brighter, sending a wave of force that knocked Ella back. She hit the ground hard, consciousness wavering as she saw Ben's face twist into uncertainty, then transformation. Something was wrong. Something was taking hold of him. She scrambled to her feet, her breath hitching in her throat. "Ben!" The shadows surged forward, swallowing the light and dragging her son further into their depths. She felt a primal fear rise up in her chest, a fear that, without hesitation, ignited her determination. No darkness would take her son. Not tonight, not ever. With every ounce of strength, Ella surged forward, breaking into the circle just as a scream shattered the air once more. Would she find her son before it was too late? Would the darkness consume them all? Yet as she reached for him, the earth beneath them shifted again, and she realized the ground was opening up. In that moment of desperation, she thought, what if I can save him? But as she grasped for Ben, she felt the coldness of the shadows encircle her ankles, pulling her down into an abyss she could not see. What awaited them in the darkness below? And would Ella's love be strong enough to conquer the horrors that awaited? The darkness pulled at Ella with a ferocity that clawed at her very soul. Cold fingers gripped her legs, relentless, wrapping tightly, dragging her deeper into the void. Frantic, she reached for Ben, and her heart raced as she watched him struggle against the shadows. Ben! Her voice pierced the thick silence, filled with desperation. But the fear in his eyes began to blur, transforming into a vacant stare. He lifted the strange stone higher, as if it were a beacon calling to something far more sinister. The laughter of lost souls surrounded them, drowning out all reason. "Join us," they whispered, seductive and terrible. The abyss beckoned, whispering secrets of power and belonging, but Ella would not give in. She clawed at the ground, fingers digging into the damp earth, her breath coming in short gasps. She felt warmth dissipate, replaced by an icy grip on her heart. Time warped around her, each second stretching into an eternity. With a surge of determination, she shouted, "This isn't to you, Ben. Fight it." But her words barely registered. He stood rigid, transfixed by the monstrous shine emanating from the stone. Sensing the urgency, Ella lunged forward, ignoring the pain that shot through her as the shadows tightened their hold. "We need to leave. Now." The words tumbled from her lips like a desperate prayer. Did I end that moment? Something flickered in Ben's gaze, an ember of recognition. Instinctively, he staggered back, the light flickering as if caught in a battle between its overwhelming allure and his inherent fear. But the shadows howled in anger, rushing forward, eager to claim both mother and son. Ella's heart raced. She couldn't let the darkness take him. Not like this. Mustering every ounce of love and resolve, she pushed against the encroaching shadows, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Remember the lake? Remember how we used to fish together? The laughter we shared?" At the mention of their memories, Ella saw it. A subtle shift in Ben. The glow of the stone dimmed slightly, a mere flicker. "Mom?" His voice was confused, shaky, a glimmer of the boy she loved breaking through. "Yes, it's me, Ben. I'm right here." Ella's voice trembled but remained steady. "You have to let go of that thing. I need you." The shadows hesitated, disturbed by the brightness of their bond. Taking a chance, Ella extended her hand towards him. "Please, Ben." For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Ben's fingers twitched toward her, caught between the stone and its dark power. She could see him fighting against it, and in that moment of struggle, hope ignited within her. But then, darkness surged. It came as a wave, angry and powerful, clawing back at Ben, pulling him further toward the stone. The cacophony of lost souls burst to life again, screeching, screaming, as though they knew their chance might slip away. "No!" Ella cried as the shadows grasped him tighter. "Ben!" She strained to pull him back, risking everything as she made one last desperate attempt to breach the divide that in her struggle. The ground quaked beneath her. The stones in the circle twisted, faces emerging in grotesque contortions, the ground cracking open like a hungry mouth. Ella felt the earth below them shift, threatening to yield to the darkness entirely. And then, without warning, Ben's hand jerked backward as if it were a broken string being pulled. He let out a choked cry, the stone slipping from his fingers, crashing to the ground. A tremor ran through the clearing, unsettling the air, filling it with heat and an energy that crackled like static. For a moment, the shadows halted. They recoiled as though wounded, their whispers turning to panicked hisses. Ella seized the chance. "Run, Ben!" she shouted, grasping his arm and pulling him toward her. "Now! We need to get out of here!" Together, they stumbled backward, the shadows raging in fury. The pulse of the stone intensified, releasing blinding light that made the shadows scream. But Ella didn't look back. She kept her eyes on the way out, forcing her feet to move. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently. Beneath them, the earth cracked wide open, threatening to consume them whole. "Ella!" Ben shouted, panic flooding his voice. The ground shifted again, and she could feel the pull of the abyss beneath her. Would they escape the grasp of the dark? Would they find their way back home? Or were they destined to be lost forever? As the shadows writhed in fury around them, Ella's heart pounded like a drum. The escape felt tantalizingly close, and yet what lay ahead felt equally terrifying. What secrets still awaited them in the heart of the forest? The ground shuddered violently beneath Ella's feet, sending tremors of dread up her spine. She could feel the abyss trembling, radiant echoes of chaos bouncing off the trees surrounding them. Shadows stretched closer, snapping like tendrils of smoke, hungry for the living. "Come on," Ella cried, pulling Ben along, but he hesitated, eyes darting back to the fallen stone. The echoes of the abyss called his name, whispering promises of power and freedom that clawed at the edges of his sanity. "Ben," Ella shouted, her voice slicing through the thickening air. "Stay with me." Fear twisted her insides like a vice. Her heart raced as shadows swelled, each pulse urging her back toward the fold of despair. Ben's face was a mask of confusion, torn between the allure of the stone and the reality of his mother's hand clasped tightly around his. "Let go," she screamed, her fingers trembling with a grip forged from desperation. At that moment, a deep rumble echoed around them, displacing the air and cutting off her thoughts. The darkness writhed, morphing, showing images of fleeting faces and cries for help, ghosts trapped in a loop of eternal anguish. A sickening sensation twisted her stomach. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a battle against lingering, heavy darkness that had consumed souls before them. The thrum of the stone pulsed with hot energy, the light flaring one last time before dimming, casting them into muted shadows. Ben's gaze flickered between the stone and Ella, a battle of wills playing out in his eyes. Each second stretched into a lifetime, and Ella was terrified that like the many lost before him, he might disappear into the dark. "Mom," he stammered, as if awakening from a dream, but creeping fingers of shadow wrapped tight around his legs, dragging at his ankles. "Run, Ben," she commanded, more a command than a plea. Then, without thinking, she yanked at the stone, trying to give it a final, forceful push away from them. It rolled, emitting a bright crackle before landing against a tree, startling a flurry of ravens from their perch. Their caws shattered the suffocating silence, and the shadows recoiled momentarily, confused by the sudden change. In that brief moment of uncertainty, Ella felt Ben stir. Ben's eyes narrowed, caught between the pull of the darkness and the flicker of his mother's presence. "Stop fighting me," he echoed back, voice almost lost in a whisper. The shadows weren't giving up their hold, though. They surged forward, hungry, seething, as if they had senses ready to hunt. Ella could feel their cold tendrils grazing her skin, recoiling as Ben took a step backward toward Ella. "Stay with me," she cried. Then, something shifted deeper in the forest, a shriek, chilling and echoing through the trees, slicing through the building chaos. The sound was unlike anything she'd ever heard. It was a call, an agonized plea from the heart of the woods. "What was that?" Ben asked wide-eyed, his fear eclipsing the darkness closing in. Ella didn't have time to answer. The shadows belched forth, hungry for solace in the void, spilling out like ink. The very trees around them twisted, branches distorting, reaching out for them with skeletal fingers. "Run," Ella spat, her pulse hammering. They turned as one, sprinting back towards the clearing and freedom, but the darkness moved faster, hungry, insatiable. She could hear its whispers rising again, enticing, menacing, promising secrets known only to the lost and damned. She stole a glance back, terror clawing at her throat. But then a sinister presence hovered on the edge of her vision, something solid, concrete. A figure stepped forth from the shadows, cloaked and veiled, the silhouette rippling in the undulating darkness. "Your bond is weak," it snarled, voice like gravel digging deep into the marrow of her fear. "Ben," she gasped. What truth lay ahead? What dark oath would the shadows require? And why did that figure seem to know more than they did, like a puppeteer waiting patiently for the final string to snap? As they raced forward, Ella felt time slipping. Would they find a way to escape this nightmare? Or would they succumb to the very darkness they fought against? They bolted through the thick, oppressive foliage as the figure's chilling words echoed in Ella's mind. The shadows followed, their growls morphing into a cacophony of whispers that scraped at her sanity. Your bond is weak. She could feel the weight of that statement pressing down on her. Could Ben truly be lost to the darkness? Mom, where do we go? Ben shouted, his voice trembling, barely above a whisper, fighting the shadows that crept closer. The dread in his tone twisted Ella's heart. They had to find light, safety, anything to escape the clutches of this encroaching despair. Over there. Ella pointed wildly at a faint glow between the trees. A desperate hope ignited within her as she sprinted toward it, adrenaline firing in her veins. The shadows lashed out, tendrils seeming to elongate with every step Ella took, whipping against her legs, tugging at her ankles, pleading for her to turn back. Keep running, she urged, pulling Ben tighter as the path narrowed, the glow becoming more pronounced. Was it a refuge? Or a trap? Mom! There Ben's voice broke, and Ella could sense the shadows growing bolder. The ground beneath them trembled again, an angry rumble that felt like the earth itself was trying to swallow them whole. Strands of darkness reached for him, wild and relentless, gripping at his clothes like claws. Don't look back, Ella cried, pushing forward with every ounce of strength, the light flickering just ahead. She dared a glance and saw a tree illuminated by an otherworldly glow, its bark shimmering, pulsing in a rhythm they both could feel. It seemed alive and aware. But just as they approached, the vile figure emerged again, blocking the path mere feet away. Its eyes burned with a creeping fire, glinting like embers in a dying flame. Going somewhere? It hissed, features obscured by its hood, but the contempt was palpable, slithering around them like smoke. Let us pass, Ella demanded, her voice breaking, but strength growing in her desperation. She was fighting for Ben, for the instinct that told her to protect him at all costs. Your soul will join the others, the figure crooned, an unnatural smile splitting its face. The shadows behind it surged forward, and Ella could feel them pressing against her, seeping into her skin, intent on claiming her. Ben! Now! She shouted, pushing him toward the glowing tree. She didn't know what it was, but it was their only chance. Just as the figure lunged, she grabbed Ben's hand, and they dove toward the light. The impact was electric, a jolt of energy coursing through them both. It felt warm, yet simultaneously foreign, almost as if the tree was welcoming them while simultaneously assessing the threat that was the darkness behind them. The whispers grew frantic, clawing at the edges of her consciousness, screaming for them to turn back and that illuminated space. Ella felt something shift, a tremor purified by the light, weakening the shadows. But it wasn't over. The figure pushed through the brilliance, its mouth contorting in rage. It raised a hand, shadows coiling around its fingers like living vines. Foolish mortals, you cannot escape your fate, the growled voice now a snarl. Ignoring the panic gripping her heart, Ella squeezed Ben's hand, their connection a lifeline against this onslaught. Stay close, she breathed, knowing their bond was stronger than any darkness. Would they discover the truth within the light or become another whisper lost to the abyss? As they stood at the threshold, the figure wailed, shadows swirling around it in an angry tempest. You are bound to me. You cannot escape. And at that moment, Ella felt something awaken within her. Was it courage? Was it the promise of protection? The tree ignited in dazzling light, an explosion of luminescence that pushed away the shadows, forcing them back. But the ground shook again, ripping apart both sides of their escape route. Ella! Ben screamed, panic threading through every syllable. Was this fragile light enough to hold back what was coming? The darkness roared, furious, demanding retribution. Would their bond be enough to withstand this torrent, or would it fracture under pressure? The very earth seemed to tremble in fear as Ella clung to hope with that pulse of light beneath the chaos. Could they truly find salvation? Ben, trust me, Ella shouted, heart racing faster than the sinister whispers. They needed to know what power lay within the tree. What price would they have to pay? In that brief moment of suspended time, all seemed to hold its breath. What revelation could await them, and could they decisively escape the clutches of insanity? The light engulfed them, a cocoon against the shadows, yet the air grew thick and electric, suffocating in its intensity. Ella could feel the heat radiating from the ethereal tree, an energy that buzzed beneath her skin. As the darkness howled behind them, Ben's grip tightened. She could see the flicker of hope in his eyes mingling with terror. "Mom!" he gasped, the trembling sincerity in his voice pulling at her resolve. "What happens now?" Before Ella could respond, a sharp crack pierced the air. The tree quivered, the light pulsating violently. The figure outside, a silhouette against the brilliance, banged its fists against the barrier, the noise echoing like thunder in their ears. "You think it protects you? It only binds you tighter to the darkness." Every word dripped with malice, coiling around Ella like a noose. The tree swayed, responding to the malevolent threats just beyond its reach. If it were alive, it trembled with its own fear, as if sensing the anguish of those trapped within its glow. "Don't listen to it," Ella shouted, willing herself to believe in the light's power. The whispers in her head grew louder, a babbling tide threatening to drown her thoughts. "We need to find a way out." Ben's small body trembled beside her. "But what if it gets in?" She broke eye contact with the figure, focusing instead on the glowing tree. It seemed to pulse in rhythm with her racing heart, sinking with the fear surging inside her. "There must be something. We just have to figure it out." The figure outside unleashed a roar, piercing through the light, scraping at the edges of her sanity. "You are nothing without me. I own you." With every syllable, the warmth of the tree felt like it was waning, the golden light dimming as though the shadows were feeding off its brilliance. Ella's gut twisted painfully. How long could this light endure? "Mom!" Ben turned away, his young face twisted with true horror. "It's not going to last." The shadows surged forward, squirming and writhing, seeking a way through cracks in their illumination. Ella instinctively moved in front of Ben, her arms wrapping protectively around him. "We have to believe in the light. Remember what we've felt. It has to mean something." Suddenly, the ground beneath them jolted, a sharp fracture pulsating through the earth which nearly sent them to their knees. The trees surrounding the radiant one echoed the figure's rage, their branches creaking as if they too were coming alive with anger. Shadows slipped through the fissures, tendrils clawing at their feet, pulling them back toward the figure who lurked just beyond the edge of the light. "Ella, I can't!" Ben shrieked, tears streaming down his face, his voice breaking as despair clawed through his heart. "No!" Ella screamed, feeling the pull of darkness as if it were a physical force. She fought against it, every muscle straining. "We won't lose each other. Not like this. Feel me. Feel us." In an act of desperation, she closed her eyes, inhaling the air laden with an acrid sweetness mixed with the scent of fear, all while channeling every ounce of love she felt for Ben. An idea sparked. "We can't just trust the light. Maybe we need to become part of it. We can connect with it." "What? How?" Ben's voice was thin, laced with doubt and despair. But Ella felt something shift inside her, a tether of warmth threading through her heart and into the tree's core. "Take my hand, Ben. We'll surrender ourselves." Just then, the tree's light flared to blinding brilliance like a lighthouse in the tempest. Shadows jerked back, howling and screeching, but it felt both inviting and forbidding. Ella pulled Ben closer, their fingers intertwining in her mind. Flickers of memories bloomed, moments together, laughter, love. "We are the light," Ella yelled. "We will find a way." But as she shouted those words, the fissures deepened around them. The darkness lunged, and just as they were about to meld with the radiant energy of the tree, the figure shrieked in fury. Time slowed, heartbeats echoed. Would connecting with the light be their salvation, or would it lead them deeper into the darkness? Would they be consumed, lost forever? In that fractured moment, everything hung in doubt. What came next might destroy them, or it could reveal a power unfathomable. The choice loomed over them like a shadow, threatening to crush every shred of hope. Ella held her breath as the world around them danced on the edge of oblivion. The shadows writhed, and the gnarled figure of darkness seethed, furious at the prospect of losing its hold on her and Ben. "You will regret this," it hissed, voice twisted with rage. But Ella felt something igniting in the depths of her heart, a burning desire to protect her son that blazed like the light around them. "Take my hand," Ben, she urged again, uncertainty flickering in her voice, now mingled with a fierce determination. She stepped boldly toward the radiant tree, the warmth enveloping them. We are the light. The moment they made contact, an explosion of energy surged through her, enveloping them both. The warmth coursed through their veins, electrifying, and the golden tendrils of light wrapped around them, spiraling outward like vines. In that instant, she could feel Ben's heart sinking with hers, a rhythm that thrummed with hope and resilience. The dark entity roared, anger pouring from it as more shadows crashed against the protective swell of light. You are bound to me. I own you. The hatred in its voice was palpable, like poison curling around them, desperate to pull them back into despair. Ella gritted her teeth, amplifying her resolve. No, she screamed, her voice clear and piercing. We do not belong to you. We belong together. As she and Ben joined hands tighter, the tree pulsed in agony, resonating with their unity. The shadows hesitated, momentarily stunned by the potency of their bond, before surging again, wild and hungry. Ella could feel the vibrations of the forest beneath them, and in that split second, she realized. The darkness thrived on fear. Their love was the antidote. Focus, Ben, she called, eyes locked on his. Think of our happiest moments, the laughter we share, the fishing trips, the stories. The very air thickened, overwhelmed with the chaos of the shadows. But as they closed their eyes, memories flooded through them. Images of the lake, the warmth of the sun, their laughter ringing out in delight swirled around them like tendrils of light. Bring it all, she urged, as she felt their shared love creating a beacon. Let it strengthen us. Ben nodded, tears glistening in his fearful eyes, but then they sparkled with determination. He whispered back, together. Suddenly, the light exploded into a fierce brilliance that lit up the consuming shadows like a wildfire. Ella could feel the malevolence retreating, the figures surrounding them dissolving like smoke in the wind. It was working. They were breaking the chains of darkness with love. Join us! Join us! The chanting echoed from beyond as the shadows grew more frail. Ella's heart surged with newfound strength, shoving against despair. They wouldn't be tempted to return to the abyss. They would fight. A final surge erupted from within their unity, and the very ground quaked beneath their feet. We choose our fate, she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. We choose love. The world around them erupted in a cacophony of light and shadow, whispers of sorrow turning into cries of redemption. The shadows ripped apart, screaming as they stretched back into the void from which they came, their influence dissipating like smoke blown away in the wind. Ella, a voice suddenly pierced through the fray, the words imbued with desperation yet laced with warmth. It was Ben calling to her. She opened her eyes to find him standing before her, light radiating from within, illuminating their surroundings. They stood in stillness as the tree pulsed gently, its light a testament to their victory against the dark. The weight of despair had lifted, and the lingering whispers were fading into sweet silence. Mom, did we win? Ben whispered, his face shining with a mixture of amazement and disbelief. Ella knelt, wrapping her arms around him, letting the warmth of their bond envelop them both. Yes, love. We did. Together. With cautious hope, they turned, looking back to see the remnants of the darkness retreating into the depths of the forest. It felt surreal, casting away the terror that had haunted them both. Their bond felt stronger, unbreakable, a lifeline that transcended even the most tightening depths of despair. We need to go home, Ella whispered, brushing away a few lingering tears of relief. Hand in hand, they turned, steps lightening, moving away from the fear that had once consumed them. Each stride felt marked with a steadfast assurance that no darkness could ever sever their connection. As they stepped out of the shadows and into the glow of the rising dawn, Ella glanced at Ben, and he smiled back, the brightness of his spirit now untouched by the specter of fear. She knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, and amidst the whispers of the trees rustling in the gentle morning breeze, she could hear the echoes of hope resonating, a serene promise that love would always be stronger than the shadows lurking just beyond the light. You need to subscribe now to catch more thrilling tales like this. Smash that like button now to keep the algorithm buzzing. Don't forget to flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this conclusion. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Don't wait another second, show your support.